And hello once again, my name is Lupus, and today we're going to be talking about drama. I'm afraid if you are looking for, drama as in, makeup drama, or Twitch drama, or BreadTube drama, or whoever, I'm sorry, this is not the correct place. I'm very apologetic. I'm talking about the literary medium drama, plays, and the like. So I'm sorry if that was for you, but it's not for us. So today we're going to be talking about drama, plays and such, as I just said. Now, I've already made a video that went over some basic understanding of what is drama. This is more a specific discussion of drama itself on its own. I know, very, very fun stuff. Now, before I get into any of that, let me first just say, if you have liked any of these videos I've made, and I make quite a lot of these videos and help quite a lot of students, if any of them have been helpful to you, please, you can, if you want to support some of what I do, you can read some of my books. They're not about drama, I'm afraid. They're actually just books, like novels. And if you would like to read in those, you can find them in the description, and you can just check them out. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. Now, also, of course, if you want to read any of them, they can be bought on places like Amazon, or you can actually just read them for free if you download them from itch. So, now that's out of the way, let's talk about drama. So, what is drama? We're going to look at, and obviously, in very, very basic terms, drama is things like plays, right? Performances. But we're going to be talking in more about some specific concepts. So, we're going to first talk about performance and representativeness. Big words. So, performance. What is performance? A performance is sort of an act that is put on, right? Usually having actors who are doing a specific thing. It is also inherently ephemeral. We're going to get to that term later. But the idea that it is something that is put on and shown. Now, you get many different types of performances. Performances are not only in drama. You could also get a dance performance, which will obviously be a dance. Obviously, if you were to do a reading of a poem, that is still a performance of a poem. It is a reading of a poem, right? So it is still a performance. Performance is a very, very broad, general term. You could also say, if you were to give a speech, you could have, how good was your performance as a speaker, right? These are all the kinds of things you can understand. So that is something very important. The other thing about drama, representativeness. Everything in drama represents something else, right? Things are not what they are, which kind of strange. So when you go to watch a play, okay, you've just arrived, you've taken your seat, you're sitting and you're looking at the stage, the curtains open, and there are a bunch of people on the stage. Okay. These people are regular people. You could, when the performance is done, you could probably talk to them. And they have names, and they have personalities, and they are human beings. I know, crazy. So you look at these people, but what you do is, you know that they are representing other characters, right? They are representing something that they are not. So you go, oh, okay. Now you also look at the stage, and you think to yourself, well, obviously it's maybe just like an elevated bit of wood, like a wooden deck that they're standing on, but it's not that, right? Yes, it is that, but it's a place, right? It's someone's house. Because that's where the play is taking place, right? The play is in someone's home. So when you're looking at the stage, you don't see it as just a stage. You see it as a place. It represents a place other than what the stage itself is. You see a chair on the stage. Now, obviously, a chair is a chair, but what if they were to use that chair as a table? All of a sudden, the chair represents a table. It represents something other than what it is. You can see this a lot in poverty theatre, where they'll do something like they'll have a table, and they'll pretend it's a car. And then you, watching it, go, it's a car. It represents a car. It's not an actual car, obviously, but we are supposed to suspend our disbelief and see it as a car so that we can enjoy the story. So that's a very important thing to understand about drama right on the get-go. Everything represents something else, and it's all about a performance. Now let's get into some of the other things. They are dramatic characters. So who's playing, right? Who is on the stage? Who is pretending to be somebody else? Who is representing somebody else? Why are they doing that? Why are they representing someone else, right? They're telling a story. They're interacting with other characters, and these characters have a specific way of being. And that is a very important thing to do when it comes to drama. You need to understand characters. Why are the characters there? What are they talking about? What do they represent? And also a lot of the time, it's not just it's an actor representing a person, but also the characters can represent something. So say, for instance, if you look at something like Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard. It's a very famous play, and it's often done in a lot of universities that are doing literary theory. Some of the characters represent other classes of people. Now, I can't remember the characters' names off the top of my head, but there's like a character that will represent the middle class. There's a character that represents the end of the aristocracy. There's a character that represents more working class mentalities. All of these characters kind of represent something bigger than themselves, and that's so that we can tell a story. Okay, so now let's go into time and space, right? When is it happening versus where is it happening, right? So where's it situated? You get the stage versus the fiction. Okay, now we're going to get into this. When you go to see a play, okay, everything is obviously taking place on a stage. It's a bunch of people on a stage wearing clothing. Probably, I have seen nudity on stage, so you could also get nudity, but generally they're wearing something. So they're wearing something, which generally represents something else, right? They might have like a cardboard crown on their head, but we're supposed to understand when we look at it that that's not a cardboard crown, that's a gold crown. Yes, sure, it's a cardboard crown that's been painted yellow to look kind of like gold, but we know when we're watching it, we're like, oh, that character's playing a king, so it makes sense for them to have a crown on their head, and sure, the, performance, this theatre company, could not afford to buy a real crown, so they made a fake crown, but we know, looking at it, that it is not real. Right, that it represents something else. So on the stage, you get the reality. But then, basically, placed on top of it is the fiction. Right? So when you look at the stage has maybe some set around it, right? Someone's like built some things, there's some cupboards and whatever in the background. And we now know, okay, yes, it's a stage with cupboards and nonsense on it. But we imagine that being placed on top of that is a room. It takes place in someone's bedroom. That's where it takes place. So, basically, the fiction has been placed on top of the stage. So, that's why the space, yes, it's just a stage, but it's not. Right? It's an actual place in our heads. And also, of course, the time in which it's happening is different to the time that it actually took place. So, take something like Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet takes place over the course of several days. The play takes like 2 hours. So, the stage time is different to the fictional time. That's where you get the idea of the performance versus the reading versus the fictional time. The amount of time it takes to perform a play is different to the amount of time it takes to read a play, which are both different to the amount of time that the actual play takes place. Imagine a play that takes place over the course of 500 years. Do you really think that they expect you to sit and watch 500 years? Or is it going to be 2 hours long? The first hour is, now, and then the next 30 minutes takes place 200 years later, and the next takes place 200 years later. Is that more likely? Which means that the performance time, 2 hours, is different to the reading time. If you were to read it, you might take an hour to read it. And the fictional time is also different. The fictional time is 500 years. The reading time is an hour, and the performance time is 2 hours, unless of course you're also factoring in the break. There's often a remission. Now my brain is not working. There's a break in the middle of a play where you go out and have some coffee, maybe for 30 minutes, and then you come back, right? So the play takes 2 hours, but you're actually there for 2.5 hours. That is a different amount of performance time versus reading time versus fictional time, right? So the time and space in which it takes place is different from reality, right? And also when you're reading something, so let's just talk about then the space, right? When you're reading something, sure, it's usually shorter to read something than it is to watch it performed, but also it takes place in a different place if you're reading it, right? If you are seeing a performance, okay, you're in a theater, you're watching a stage, you're watching the actors do things. If you're reading it, you're imagining the space. You might be imagining a stage, but you might also be imagining the actual place it takes place. It could be either, depending on you. Like, for instance, I've spoken to my fiancée about this, and she had told me that when she reads a play, she pictures the stage because she also has the education in drama, she pictures the stage. I picture the actual place because I'm more into prose. I'm more into novels and stuff like that. I'm picturing the actual place. She's picturing the stage, which shows a difference in mentality, which is something that you could talk about if you were analyzing a drama. These kind of things are very important. The performance, the reading, the fictional time, and space are very important. Okay, let's get next into dialogue versus the didascalia. When you are reading a play, okay, you open the play. There's the title, Romeo and Juliet. You turn the page. Oh, look, there's a list of characters. Interesting. You turn the play. It first starts off with saying something like, we're in Venice. I think it's in Venice. We're in Venice. And you go, okay. And then there's dialogue. And the dialogue follows the name of the character. So it'll say, I don't know, Romeo, and then what does Romeo say? Cool. That's shown two different things, dialogue and the didascalia. The dialogue is what is said by characters. The didascalia is the rest of the stuff, right? Stage directions. When it says Romeo must move this way, that's a stage direction. No one says that. You know, at the end of a lot of scenes, it'll say something like, exit Romeo. No one says that. What that means is that Romeo must leave. The person who plays Romeo must leave the stage because it is no longer time for them to perform. They must go away. Right? They must leave. They must not be here. Okay, and if they must leave, you're not going to say Romeo exits, exit Romeo, whatever. You're not going to say that. Right? No one's going to say that out loud. There's not going to be a narrator or a character who says, exit Romeo, and then Romeo leaves. It just gets to the point in which Romeo stops speaking, and now it's time for him to leave. So he leaves. But that's a didascalia. It is the other things. There's also things like the title, the character list, the stage directions, basically all of the extra stuff that isn't actually the dialogue. As a matter of fact, it's things that if you're watching a performance, you don't see. You only see it really when you're reading a play, right? When you're reading a play, you see the character list. When you go to watch a play, you're often not given a character list because it's easier to keep track of characters when you can see them, right? It's much easier. You don't need a thing telling you what the characters are because also you probably don't know what they look like. But when you're looking at them on stage, you go, oh, okay, that's the person who's playing this person, that's the person who's playing this person. They have different body shapes, body structures, they speak in different ways, they're wearing different clothing. It's much easier for me to tell them rather than difference in names, where names can be difficult, right? If you just see names, like especially if you're someone like me, I forget names. Like when I read plays, I actually keep a bookmark at the very front so that I can constantly check back on the character list to be like, who's this person that's talking? I can't remember. And then I turn and I'm like, oh, okay. They're the maid. They're the whoever it happens to be. Right? I can just go back and go, oh, okay, I remember now. Okay, I remember. Cool. Let's move on. So you see, the dialogue versus the didascalia are both found in the text, but not everybody sees them. So if you're reading the didascalia. If you are sitting in the audience, you are seeing the results of the didascalia. Okay, so now let's talk about one of my favorite little things about poetry, and that is ephemerality. I said that I would mention ephemerality earlier. So ephemerality, which is very, very interesting. Ephemerality is basically the idea. So let me first say, what is ephemeral? If something is ephemeral, it means that it basically happens, and then it stops, and it goes away forever. It's gone. Performance is inherently ephemeral, which also means that there is the idea of the eternal present of drama. When you read a dramatic text, it doesn't change, right? If you read Romeo and Juliet 1,000 times, you're still reading Romeo and Juliet. Right? It's going to be the same every time. Sure, you as a person might have changed, but the text remains the same. That is not the same as a performance. When you go to watch a theatrical production, every single time you watch a play, it will be different. Not necessarily very different. Especially, say, if there's people who have put on a show and you go to see it 3 times. It's going to be the same actors, the same stage, the same everything. However, it's a different day. Right? They're saying things in slightly different ways. It won't be exactly the same. And also, if you're sitting in a different place, it'll be different. Think about watching a movie. When you watch a movie, everything is perfectly framed for you, right? It's on a screen. and you're looking at it, and it doesn't matter where you turn. If you turn one side, or you turn the other side, it still is the same picture. That's not true in a play. If I'm sitting in the very front on the first day, and the second day I'm sitting in the back, I get a different performance. It is different. Even if I sit in the exact same place, it's a different day, so it's different. It's not the same performance as yesterday. And also, like, a good way of seeing this is actually in mistakes. I've been to quite a number of plays, right? I'm one of those people. So I've been to quite a number of plays, and I have seen errors. I've seen mistakes made. Where, for instance, someone will stumble with their words. It happens, right? Maintaining a perfect consistency for like an hour is difficult, right? It's difficult to be like a stage actor. I would say it's harder than like being a film actor, because you got to really like memorize your lines, and you got to do everything on the same night, like you're telling an entire story in one go, right? It's difficult. It's easy to slip up, and it kind of becomes part of the drama. Some people would say, oh, it's unprofessional, but it happens. People stumble their words. It happens. I saw a very, very let me just give an example, right? I'm going to give two examples. One, I saw a very, very high-end production of My Fair Lady. Very high-end production. It was at an expensive theater. It was an expensive ticket. It was all sorts of elaborate costumes. It had a huge, like, dance choreography. It was tons of people, right? It was huge. And the character who played the My Fair Lady person, I can't remember what the character's name is, but the main character, she slipped up her words just once. Like, she stumbled over her words. She just did that. And you could see she just needed a second to be like, realign herself. And there was another character another actor who was sitting next to her, who then just in character, because she's like a posh lady, she turned to the audience and just said something along the lines of, "It happens to all of us." And then and everyone like had a laugh. Obviously, it's not supposed to be in the play. The mistake wasn't supposed to be in the play, and her turning to the audience and saying, "Oh, it happens to all of us." They're not supposed to be in the play, but it's part of that particular performance that no one will ever see again. And that was a very high-end production. Now, I also saw a very, very amateur production of a play called Barretts of Wimpole Street, which is a very slow story. But I saw it in the community theatre, and it was very dry. And the actors remember, community theatres, they're not professional actors. And a lot of them made mistakes. They made mistakes, quite a number of mistakes. It's a very, very dialogue-heavy play. It's people speaking in monologues for 10 minutes at a time kind of thing. And a couple times people fumbled their words. And then they catch themselves and they continue. But that's not going to happen if I watch it tomorrow. You're not going to get the exact same mistakes. There could also be a time in which there's no mistakes. That could happen, right? So if I watch a play, it's never going to happen again. Not in the exact same way that it just happened, which makes drama so fascinating. Also, just think of like other performances, like performance art, right? If you see a person doing a performance art outside, you're never going to get the exact same performance art. But anyway, let's move on. The next thing is the inherent limitation of dramatic performance. We've kind of been dancing around this the entire time. On a stage, you have limited space, right? It's difficult to, for instance, do a globe-trotting adventure, like I spoke about before. It's difficult to be like, oh, you're having an adventure story where it starts in one country and goes to another country. That's difficult to do on a stage, right? Like, you would have to have a whole new set built. You would have to have things that, like, open and unfold. And it's a whole long, irritating thing. It happens. But everything's in your imagination, right? As the audience, you're sitting there and watching, and you go, oh, I can see that you're using, as I said earlier, a table as a car, but I have suspended my disbelief, and I'm like, yes. Now, while I'm watching this, that is a car. I know it's not a car, it's a table, but I am sitting there and going, yes, okay, it is a car. I'm not going to stand up in fury and shout at the audience, how dare you think that I will allow you to sit there and pretend like that table is a car. No one does that. You just sort of sit there and go, it is a car. And that leads to the inherent limitation in dramatic performances, right? That's why so many plays take place in like small rooms, because that's easier to do. So there is this inherent limitation, which then leads to a certain level of creativity that isn't really found when you have no limitations. So, yeah. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about in terms of drama is theatrical conventions. These are some things that are very distinct. Things like asides. An aside is when, like, you turn to the, I just turn to the audience and I'm like, actually, that mistake I spoke about earlier, when she turned to the audience and said something like, we all make mistakes. That's an aside. Now, an aside could be on purpose or not. I watched a production of The Producers, which was fantastic. And there's many times in which they talk to the audience. They're like saying something, blah, 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 and then they turn to the audience and they're like, well, this guy's crazy, or something, right? It's an aside. It's sort of, the other character can't hear them because I'm talking to the audience. Then you also get things like monologues and soliloquies. Monologues aren't realistic. People don't stand and talk for 20 minutes or also talk to themselves. Soliloquies, specifically, are actually a way for us to see the inner workings of a person's mind. They're talking to themselves, but they're not actually, right? When we watch a play and we see a person by themselves on a stage just talking, we don't think to ourselves, I think this person has schizophrenia. They think that things are there that aren't there, and they're just talking to themselves. We don't think that. We think to ourselves, they're thinking. Because it's difficult to show thinking without actually saying the words out loud, right? You can't demonstrate thinking on a stage without there being words. So anyway, then a direct address is also just directly addressing the audience, which is similar to an aside, but a little bit different. Then things like exchanging roles. Like, what if I was to have two different characters playing the same actors? Or the other way around, right? I have one actor who's playing two different roles. If that was in a movie, you might be like, why didn't you just get another actor? But in a play, you might be like, oh, why are they doing this? What is the reason for doing this? Right? It's a theatrical convention that you'll only really find in theater, because like that's not going to happen in, say, a novel, right? You're not going to see that in a novel, but you're going to see it in a play. And then there's the idea of the play within a play, which is like a play that takes place inside another play, something like The Island, right? Which was like John Carney and Ethel Fugard, and then right it's literally about people in Robben Island, which is for non-South Africans that was a prison island, in which they're performing a production of Everyman, which is a play. They're performing that play, but the play is taking place within the play, right? It's a meta theatrical thing, which maybe at some point that's probably talk about meta theater, but yeah. So that's going to be my basic overview of drama. Hopefully it has been interesting to you. You never know. Maybe it was absolutely terrible. If it was, I apologize profusely. If it was useful, however, you can check out some of my stuff. As I spoke about at the beginning of this thing, you can check out some of my books if you so desire. You do not have to. I don't have any plays at the moment. Maybe one day I will, but I don't at the moment. So how about you check out some of the other stuff? They're all in the description. Hopefully they're fun. If they're not fun, I immensely apologize. But yeah, you can read some of my books, such as something like, I don't know, Dear Martha, which is told entirely through letters, and it's a kind of Lovecraftian horror story. So yeah, maybe you'll enjoy that. If you don't, I apologize. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day further, and goodbye.